Reg has been featured a little bit. He had a nice crossover move on Jordan last night, but they might get into that rivalry, that relationship a little bit later on. But Reg has been nice enough to watch. I don't think it's cathartic. I don't think it's therapeutic, but Reg has been nice to watch the first 4 episodes. How are you feeling today as opposed to last Monday when I talked to you?
The juices continue to flow. I think last night's 2 episodes really took me back to the center of 90s, really late 80s and early 90s basketball, because the feelings, and you could see the raw emotion on MJ's face in talking about Isiah and the Bad Boys and the Pistons. For those people who didn't understand that, he's correct. Back then, you played, especially in your division, you played each other 6 times, 3 at home, 3 on the road. So you built up a lot of disdain and dislike towards certain teams. And Detroit was one of those teams. But I will say this, and I know looking at the videos and the images of taking him out the air, a lot of teams were like that. The Knicks were like that. Miami was like that. Milwaukee was like that. The Celtics were like that. There was a lot of teams that played a very physical presence, especially in the Eastern Conference, because we only played the Eastern Conference teams twice. But especially in the East, that was the brand of basketball. But you could see on his face that MJ is still living with it. And I agree with him because, we had to face him 6 times and go against that bad boy defense. But you couldn't be a punk. You couldn't be a punk. And I remember, going against, Dumars. And
what do you mean, punk? You not back down?
Not back down, and you couldn't just settle. See, they wanted you to settle. They didn't think you could. Were you up for the punishment? So Joe would tell me, because he was like the gentle guy on that team. So, and we guarded one another, and he's like, Reg, I'm just telling you, if you beat me and you get into the paint, you know what's going to happen. Well, I know what's going to happen. What do you want me to do? Sit out here and just continue to shoot? I just couldn't sit out here and shoot jump shots. So you had to take the punishment. That's just how it was, right? You couldn't be a punk. You had to get in there and take it. So what? You get up and, you move on.
That style, though, like the Pistons
didn't. It was ugly.
Yeah. But the Pistons didn't care if you liked them or not. Like, they wanted you to be. If I'm a Piston now, if I'm Isiah or Bill Laimbeer, I like that Michael Jordan's still mad.
Yes.
I mean, that's why you were playing. You wanted to rent space in somebody's head. But then you turn around and you go, did Michael rent space in their heads too? Because then you walk off the floor and you're not even going to acknowledge Jordan. You're just feeding the beast if you do that. Like, I'd rather be nice with Mike than if I'm gonna tug on Superman's cape. It ain't going well. It's not going to go well from this point on.
Well, if you're Laimbeer, Mahorn, Isiah, to a certain degree, job well done, because you're absolutely right. They did not care at the time, and they're right. It was Larry, it was Magic, the next was Michael, and all those 3 teams that I just mentioned played a beautiful brand of basketball. You had Showtime, Fast Break, the beautiful passes by Magic, and the finishes by Worthy and Kareem, and you had the beautiful, stroke of Larry Legend, and they played well as a team in the championships. And you had Michael, who was, 5 to 6 feet above everyone else, floating on air. And then you had the Bad Boys, right, who didn't care, who played a physical style of basketball, but guess what? It worked. And that model and brand went to New York for Pat Riley. It went to Miami with Pat Riley. So that brand of basketball was around for a while. There was a niche for it, and teams tried to adopt that. And now you see in today's games how they have gone away from that, and everything is more so catered towards the offense now. They would much rather see you score 115, 120, 125 points as opposed to the Pistons brand of basketball when it was 80 to 75, right?
Oh, it was so bad. Do you think that Michael single-handedly said, I don't want Isiah on the Dream Team?
Yes. And I know, look, let me just say this. Isiah Thomas should have been on that 92 Dream Team. And people are going to say, well, who do you have taken off? John Stockton, Clyde Drexler, one of those two guys, Christian Laettner, one of those three guys. Isiah Thomas should have been on that team because of what he had done in the league, his stature. He had won 2 championships. He should have been on that team.
Do you know for a fact that Mike was the reason why Isiah didn't make the Dream Team?
I wouldn't say for a fact, but I think that is the unwritten rule that people talk about.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's MJ alone.
But how did Mike get this past Chuck Daly, who was Isiah's coach, who coached the Dream Team? That's what I don't understand. Where
it has nothing to do with Chuck Daly, because at the time this was Commissioner Stern putting this team together.
But do you think the commissioner said? Do you think he said, "Mike, I want you on the Dream Team," and Mike said to the commissioner, "I will, but these are the guys I want. This is the guy I don't want."
No, I wouldn't say he said, "These are the guys I want." I believe MJ probably said, "Okay, I'll do it," but Isiah cannot be on this team. He didn't make the roster, but he made sure someone wasn't on the roster.
But what bothers people or bothered people about Isiah Thomas?
Because he's so cute, the smile, cute little teddy bear. He was little in stature, but he was. You talk about the bad boys. He might have been the meanest and toughest of the bad boys, but you didn't think about that because of the smile.
Yeah.
And he had won, a championship at IU under Bobby Knight, and he formed that team. He formed them into that tough, take him out the air. But it was Lambeer and Mahorn and Buddha and Rodman and John Sally. They took all the hits, because they were the bad boys. But Isiah was he was conducting all of that behind the scenes.
Talking to Reggie Miller, the Hall of Famer, Turner Sports NBA analyst. I try to tell people how great Rodman was with the Pistons. And I just, when he was with the Bulls, he became a little more one-dimensional where he was just rebounding. He wasn't the great defender he was in Detroit. He took pride in guarding Bird or James Worthy, and he just was a pogo stick. He just ran all day. But can you imagine a coach who says to his player, you can go to Vegas for a couple of days in season.
Yeah.
And they gave him his blessings to go there so he could shack up with Carmen Electra in Vegas.
Look, what you see from that image in the videos, that could not be done today because of camera phones, smartphones, because of social media. If you look at the footage, there are no cameras going off. People aren't holding cell phones up when he's on stage and his shirt is off. You could do those. I mean, it's a human GPS nowadays, your phone. So you could track everyone's movement. That could not happen in today's era because of social media. But, I go to tell people, think about if you're Phil Jackson and the Bulls, you have arguably 3 of the best on-ball perimeter defenders in the game on one team. MJ, Scotty, and Dennis. So if those guys played in today's games where you switch everything, every pick and roll, that's like lockdown city. And I try to tell people but he didn't score. What did he do well? He did, minus the scoring, the rebounding, the positioning, and all the toughness. I don't think I've told this story before. When Mike was filming Space Jam, they built the Jordan Dome for him so he could work out. And he would film all day, 6 o'clock call time, and he would be done around 6 p.m., 7 o'clock. And then we would go up and actually, it was the best runs ever. So they called it the Jordan Dome, and all the top ballers came up on the Warner Brothers lot.
Invitation only?
Invitation. I mean, Michael didn't say who he wanted, but it was all the top players. So you had, Eddie Jones at the time, Juwan Howard, guys. I believe Magic came through once or twice, but it was unbelievable. No riffraff, but it was nothing. Hard fouls. And this is at the time where they were thinking about signing Rodman. And my good friend and my teammate at UCLA, Jack Haley, who had been Rodman's babysitter in San Antonio and then in Chicago, it was close to them signing him. And other than MJ, during those runs, Rodman, I had played against him, obviously, when he was in Detroit and San Antonio, was phenomenal. And usually in pickup games, Dan, you know this, it's all about scoring and, Ole defense. So what was he going to bring in a pickup game? Phenomenal. And the little exercise that he did last night about tracking the rebounds, and he could tell the arcs and the rotations, it's absolutely 100% true. The instincts that dude had was unbelievable.
Yeah, he's a fascinating guy. Just can't imagine if you imagine somebody nowadays going, hey, can I go to Vegas for, remember when Johnny Manziel, they had a weekend off and he went to Vegas? People went crazy over that. But with Dennis, I think Phil's genius is he knew how to treat everybody as an individual. A lot of coaches treat everybody collectively, and I think Phil was able to look at you individually and say, this is what you need. That's different from what he needs.
And another fascinating look, what's great about this doc is the in-game adjustments that the great players make. The interaction that MJ had with Rodman about, a particular switch when Oak is coming behind me. The great ones know how to adapt on the fly because everyone has a game plan coming into a game. And then, like Mike Tyson said, once you get punched in the mouth, you got to be able to adapt. Those guys were able to adapt on the fly to any situation. And just to hear the talking, that's what I missed probably the most in watching this thing, because it's those minor adjustments as teammates and as brothers that you make that makes the difference between, being a champion and, being a runner-up. And that is what's fascinating to see.
I know we get into this discussion. It's like, who's the greatest of all time? And then we go back and forth with that. But when you start to look at great teams, we look at, it's really the generation in which they played in. The Celtics of the 60s wouldn't come anywhere near a team now. The Bulls in the 90s, though, it feels like they could play physical if they had to. They could run if they needed to. They could play great defense if they needed to. They would have adapted to become better three-point shooters because the game would have called for that. And if I took Golden State with Durant and Steph and Clay and put them back in the 90s, so if I do it the other way around, I put Jordan's Bulls, now against Golden State, and I take Golden State now and put them back with the Bulls, how do you think that fares?
I think the Bulls would have been unbelievable in today's generation because we just mentioned about them being able to switch everything, which they do in today's game, and you have three of the best on-ball perimeter defenders.
Would they beat Golden State with Durant?
Yes.
The 7-game series.
Here's my thing. If you put that Golden State team in the 90s, the question is going to be, because back then you could hold, you could hit, you saw the physical play.
Yeah.
Is Steph going to be able to hold up to that? Right? KD, I believe, could. Durant, yes. Possibly Clay. Is Steph. Now, I know Steph would be able to adapt because we all would have to, but you get to hold back then. You get to be in the clinches. You get to take people out the air. Is he able to take that punishment? Could you imagine if LeBron and KD took that punishment that MJ and a lot of us had to take in the 90s? I just wonder how they would. I would love to see that. Because now that's a flagrant foul and possibly a 5-game suspension.
Well, but you wouldn't be expecting those calls. It's if I say LeBron is the same size as Karl Malone with a better handle, so Karl could handle it. I'm looking at LeBron. If he doesn't know, hey, wait a minute, I'm supposed to get those calls, or they they would give me those calls in another era. If he knows only what he's playing, I think LeBron would be great in any era.
LeBron could have played 60 in any era.
Yeah.
LeBron in any era.
Yeah.
Some players you're wondering, could they play in any era?
But would you take
KD could play in any era.
If I took Kobe and Shaq versus the Golden State Warriors with Durant?
That's an unbelievable matchup because no one had an answer for Shaq. In those first three championships, no one had an answer for Shaq. I don't know what Chicago would have done.
But if I put them against Golden State,
Kobe and MJ, that would have been I still give the edge to MJ, but Kobe would have kept him honest.
And you got Pippen, who's going to match with him. You got Rodman. What if I put Shaq and Kobe versus Golden State with Durant, Steph, Clay?
Okay, now what are you playing in today's rules or
today's rules? Today's rules.
You don't have a Shaq was a beast. Man, you never asked for that dude, man.
What, you don't think JaVale McGee is going to be able to stop him? No. But you think that Shaq Kobe versus the Bulls, they would give them a better run than the Golden State Warriors with Durant, Steph, and Clay?
I do.
Because of Shaq. And Kobe is going to go, him and Mike are going to go, maybe not toe-to-toe, but it's going to be pretty close.
He would keep them honest.
Yes, both ends of the floor. Hey, before I let you go, NBA talking about opening up camps here May 1st, opening up facilities. What do you think? What kind of time frame are we looking at?
Well, if they open up practice facilities, that means guys can go in and actually get workouts in. It's probably going to take most players anywhere from 2.5 to 3 weeks to get in some type of shape. I mean, I think you're looking at mid-June again. If you're going to resume basketball, we're talking about mid-June to late June of getting NBA basketball back. Again, with no fans, though.
Yeah, I don't see that happening, but shouldn't you already be in shape? How out of shape can you be?
Be in shape? How would they be in shape? They've been at home. What, on a treadmill?
Well, there's home gyms.
That's not basketball shape.
Well, it's not like
there's a difference.
They're not going to have a beer gut.
No, but conditioning is going to take a while. To get your legs back, it's going to take a while.
Do you believe that Steph Curry doesn't have a basketball hoop at his house?
I believe he does not have a basketball hoop at his house.
Isn't that amazing?
No, most players don't have an indoor court.
Well, no, but even an outdoor. You got it. Do you have an outdoor court?
I do.
Okay.
But shooting outdoors and doing drills outdoors is a lot different than doing drills indoor.
Who's the second best shooter in your neighborhood?
I would say Paul Pierce is around here somewhere. I would say Paul Pierce. Paul Pierce is around here somewhere. I would say Paul George. Paul George.
Okay.
Paul George.
So I would be the third best shooter if I lived in the neighborhood.
You would be the third best shooter in Calabasas.
Thank you.
Come to Calabasas High, baby.
The tough courts of Calabasas High.
Oh, it's tough out here, man. The mean street of Calabasas. It's tough out here.
All right, we're going to check in with you when your episode. Is your episode 8 or 9? Do you know?
It's one of those two, from what I've been hearing.
All right, find out from our good friend Gail when you get featured here in the documentary.
Again, I have no idea how they I'm just telling y'all now, I have no idea how they frame this, nor do I care, like what he said about Isiah being a a-hole.
Yeah.
I might be in that same vein, so I apologize. I'm really a nice guy, but I was only doing my job.
Not on the court.
I was only doing my job.
I know you were. That's why you became a Hall of Famer. All right, Reg. Thanks, bud. Talk to you soon.
Y'all the best.
All right, that's Reggie Miller. Episode 9, I'm being told. Reg is on episode 9. Do you look forward to that? Because you don't know what Michael's going to say about you. Reg only knows what he was asked about. You don't know what Jordan's going to say about you. I can't be as bad as Isiah. I want to get to this. Isiah Thomas was making the rounds yesterday. Also his former teammate Bill Laimbeer. They were on the Detroit Pistons, the bad boy teams. And, of course, the documentary on the Bulls, it feels like you got to have a villain for each episode. You had Jerry Krause, little bit of Scottie Pippen, and now your villain or villains are the bad boys. And you get to hear from them. Isiah Thomas gets to have his rebuttal to Michael Jordan with what he had to say about Isiah Thomas, and they didn't shake the Bulls' hands. Isiah Thomas said, hey, the Celtics did that to us. Now, I just saw this article. An ex-Celtics staffer refutes Isiah's claim in The Last Dance about the 1988 team walking off in the playoffs. So this happened with the Pistons and Bulls in 1991, Eastern Conference Finals. The Pistons left the court without congratulating the Bulls. They got swept 4 games. So if you're the Pistons, you're upset that you got embarrassed. You got swept 4 games by the Bulls. So Mike goes to the NBA Finals for the first time. Now, they talk about this. Isiah says that his explanation was the Celtics did it first to them. John Jennings, a former Boston staff member, said on Monday, what Isiah said simply isn't true. I was sitting behind head coach Casey Jones, and I'm trying to think if there was anything. I think it was to get off the floor. One of the scariest experiences of my life was after that game ended, Jennings said. I was literally behind Casey Jones, and we were trying to make our way to the locker room. You had all these people. It was a dome stadium, massive crowd. They were coming onto the floor, excited, jumping up and down. It was crazy, absolutely pandemonium. They finally beat us, so you get it. Nothing against Detroit fans, but I've never forgotten that feeling of trying to make our way to the locker room. All I know is Kevin McHale, who struck up, I believe, a friendship with Isiah. You can see them leaving the court at the same time. And I believe Isiah had talked to Kevin privately about, hey, we got to get over the hump. How do we get over the hump? Asking Kevin McHale, the team they couldn't beat, how to beat the Boston Celtics. So Isiah said, hey, the Celtics did that to us as well. Yeah, keep this in mind. I was there when Magic hits the jump, that running hook in the Garden to beat the Celtics. When the Lakers won the NBA Finals in the Boston Garden. Is anybody here going to say, I never saw the Celtics shake their hands? Or when the Celtics won and a team is running off the floor at the Boston Garden, did anybody say anything about that? I mean, it's kind of silly. I mean, it's sportsmanship, but okay. Isiah was on Get Up on ESPN yesterday, and he had this to say about not making the dream team because Reggie Miller yesterday said, hey, you know what? Mike didn't want him on the dream team, plain and simple. Also understand this, Isiah and the Pistons beat up Michael Jordan. They literally beat him up on the floor. They were known as the bad boys, and they lived up to that reputation. And then during the All-Star game, Isiah told players on the Eastern Conference All-Star team to freeze out Michael Jordan. Don't pass the ball to Mike. You can understand there's a little bit of backstory here with Michael Jordan. And Jordan doesn't forget. He doesn't forgive. He doesn't forget. Here's Isiah on being disappointed about not making the dream team.
Looking back, if I'm not a part of the dream team because a lapse in emotion in terms of not shaking someone's hand, if that's the reason why I didn't make the dream team, then I am more disappointed today than I was back then when I wasn't selected.
Isiah's got to take some inventory here, man. He does. I know he's on TV, got a great smile, great basketball player, but you got to take some inventory here. Right? Got to understand who you were as a player, who your team was when you were playing. It's different. And you can't do this to Jordan. You can't. And you can't come back and say, oh, I'm really disappointed that, that we're being labeled these bad guys and, we didn't shake their hands and all. Own it. You owned your style, then own it now. I would be shouting from the mountaintops. Hell no, I didn't want to shake his hand. If I'm the Pistons, don't give me this apology tour. I would go about it the way Bill Laimbeer did. He was on The Jump yesterday on ESPN, and this is what Laimbeer had to say.
Well, we weren't bad people. We were just basketball players winning. And that kind of stuck with me because they didn't know who we were or what we were about as individuals in our family life. So all that whining they did, why shake their hand? They were just whiners. They won the series. Give them credit. We got old. They got past us, but okay, move on.
That's what you do. That's what you do. Not this apology tour. Isiah goes, well, if I knew what I know now, then I would have apologized. No, you wouldn't have apologized. You know what? You got beat. You got embarrassed. You don't want to shake their hands? Fine. Back then it was okay. I don't need revisionist history here. Mike could be an ass back then. He could be brutal on his own teammates and the opposition. But Mike, you own it. You own it. That's who you were. That's what made you great. And the Pistons, own it. Be like Laimbeer. No, they were whiners. We didn't want to shake their hands. Yes, that's the way to go about it there. And Michael can hold a grudge. Yes. And Mike didn't want him on the dream team. Yes. Isiah froze out Mike on the All-Star team. Hey, don't throw the ball to him. Mike didn't start it. Mike finished it. And the other part of this that I found fascinating, it's being reported now that Jordan finally decided to do the documentary. All of this footage that I saw NBA Entertainment cameramen shooting in that final season, and I kept wondering, what are they using that for? And I remember that talking to somebody, because I did work with NBA Entertainment back then. I said, what are you going to do with that? Is there going to be, that season-ending video on the Bulls? And I was told, no, that's video that won't see the light of day unless Michael approves it. And I laughed because I thought, wait a minute. Really? Like Mike's going to be the one who decides? And I went, wow, is he powerful? They had a contract. Mike would allow it, but he would allow you to film it, but he wouldn't allow you to air it until he decided. Let's fast forward here to Michael being approached about the documentary because he had been approached and they kept saying, hey, we still have that footage. Didn't want to do it. Is it just a coincidence that Michael Jordan decided to do this documentary on the day the Cleveland Cavaliers, led by LeBron James, won the championship? Mike decided that day. That day. It's not a coincidence, folks. That's Michael Jordan. All that is a tap on the shoulder to say, oh, I got to remind a whole new generation of just how great I was. Because now you started to get a little bit of this, hey, LeBron, he won a title in Cleveland. Okay. This is just a reminder. This isn't a documentary. It's not. This is a reminder of Michael saying to everybody in the basketball world, hey, if you didn't see it, now you get a chance. This is what it was all about. This is who we were. This is how great I was. This is the dominance that we had. We scared everybody. People loved coming out to watch us play. We were rock stars. We were the Beatles. Look at what I created. This about Jordan. And Michael had control over the documentary. You can't call it a documentary if Mike had control over everything. If his company is executive producers, it's not a documentary. Now, there are parts of it that feel like a documentary, but if Michael is deciding who gets interviewed and the final say-so with it feels like Mike always got the final word in the first 4 episodes. He always gets the ball last with the game on the line. This is what Michael does. But this is what has been reported, that Mike told the producers, let's do it, after watching LeBron James celebrate a championship in Cleveland. I don't know if LeBron wins another title in L.A., that Michael has more footage to put out next year or the year after, just to remind people that, hey, LeBron's got 4 now. Just want to let you know I have 6. But this is about Michael Jordan. He's the ultimate competitor. Still competing. Give him a chance, he'll compete. And I think that's what this is. But if I'm the Pistons, stop apologizing. All right? You created an image. It's an image, an indelible image. What you meant to the game. You don't have to apologize for anything. And you know what? Jordan sure as hell ain't apologizing. He ain't apologizing for keeping you off the dream team. Are you apologizing because you froze him out at the All-Star game? That's what Isiah needs to talk about, too. Did you freeze him out? And if you did, you can understand why Mike didn't want you on the dream team.